Hi guys, I'm Scott. I hope your small groups are going really well, and I hope that these videos have been ways to challenge you, and at least challenge your thinking and create good conversations for you guys. Today is going to be maybe a little bit different. It's a mercy and justice issue, but it might not be one that you have thought of, and maybe you have, I don't know. Many social groups struggle with loneliness, depression, sickness, isolation, and abuse. And as a result, these social groups that struggle with that have high suicide rates. These are the kind of groups that Mercy and Justice Ministries seek to give care to. Things like sex trafficking, homelessness, the issue with refugees. Now, all these issues have been around for a long time, but now in our day, they've sort of become vogue endeavors for today's Mercy and Justice Ministries. And also mission trips or mission work to new and unfamiliar cultures are often seen as very valuable because of the way it benefits those in need in other countries. And when I'm done, I don't want you thinking that I don't think those are worthy. I think these are all worthy of our time and efforts. However, there is one just as worthy and just as needed right here in our own city, but in my humble opinion is profoundly overlooked. It's overlooked because it is just not cool or as exciting as these others that I've mentioned. I want to talk about one of those groups that has all of the above characteristics: depression, loneliness, isolation, abuse, but for all practical purposes is a social group that's forgotten and ignored. This group has the highest suicide rate of all social groups in America. Caring for individuals in this group has no sexy to it. It has no cool factor. It is an epic failure in the being hip department. And I suspect that's why it's ignored. And it may require more courage than any other mercy ministry. To introduce it, listen to some of these quotes. These are quotes from people who are in this social group that I'm talking about. "I'm so lonely at night. I have no one to talk to from the time I get home at 3:30 in the afternoon until I go out again the next day at 10 a.m. The dark makes me so sad. My dog is my only companion, and he's getting old and his hips are very sore. I might have to put him down. I'm scared of being without him. I will totally be alone then. No one comes to visit me. My daughter only calls me if she wants money." And then finally this one: "I haven't spoken to anyone for 3 days." These are real words spoken by elderly people. These words bring tears to my eyes, and even more, they make me scared about getting old. It seems the older a person becomes, the less visible they are to others and the less valuable. They are no longer deemed important once their bodies and minds start to fail, and it appears they no longer have anything to offer the mainstream world. I know I'm generalizing because I do know many people who love and cherish their older relatives, and they take extremely good care of them. However, I do know that many people don't. I know it because I see it every time I go visit Diana's dad at the rest home where he lives. I fear as a society we tend to write off old people as useless because they are past their expiration date. Very few people would value the opinion of a 75-year-old woman on some pertinent social issue of today. While they are often thought of as old-fashioned, what we tend to forget is that they have seen the world change more than any other generation of people who have ever lived. I mean, think about it for a minute. What was America like in the 1930s and the 1940s? And think about it now. This makes their perspective and their stories incredibly important because they give us history. History gives us context. And without context, we are stuck in a permanent present that is very, very hard to give meaning to. It is like a person who has amnesia and cannot remember who they are or where they've come from. Our elderly save us from this by giving us living, first-hand history. They help us know where we have come from. They help us know some of the stories of the tribe, of the people that we're a part of. They help us know some of the sacrifices that were given that made it possible for you and me to even be here. I have learned how to face suffering and how to stand up against evil through my older family members. The value of those lessons are impossible to measure. Sadly, though, I see people treat the elderly and their viewpoints as, what would they know? Things are different now. We discard their point of view along with all the other things we throw away when we think something is no longer relevant to our life. Okay, so listen to some verses from the Bible. I'll give you the addresses of each verse. You can look them up on your own, but I'm going to read them to you. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation. The first one is 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. And you might want to take a pen and pencil and write these down. 1 Timothy 5, verses 3 and 4. Take care of any widow who has no one else to care for her. But if she has children or grandchildren, their first responsibility is to show godliness at home and repay their parents by taking care of them. This is something that pleases God. Here's Leviticus 19, verse 32. Stand up in the presence of the elderly and show respect for the aged. Fear your God. I am the Lord. And here's Exodus 22, verse 22. You must not exploit a widow or an orphan. If you exploit them in any way and they cry out to me, then I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will blaze against you, and I will kill you with the sword. Then your wives will be widows and your children fatherless. And then finally, Deuteronomy 27, verses 18 and 19. Cursed is anyone who leads a blind person astray on the road. And all the people replied, Amen. Cursed is anyone who denies justice to foreigners, orphans, or widows. And all the people replied, Amen. Now, I'll be honest, the word elderly is not used in any of these verses. But the point of these scriptures is that as God's people, we should give special attention and care to the weakest members of our society. And that definitely includes the elderly. In the 2009 Christian Research Journal, they gave this information. They said from 1990 to 1996, the number of Americans aged 65 increased from 3.1 million to 33.9 million. That's an 11-fold increase. They are also saying that by 2040, the year 2040, there will be approximately 70 million Americans aged 65 or more. That will mean in 2040, 1 in 5 Americans are in the elderly bracket. In other words, this mercy and justice issue of elder care, taking care of the elderly, is not going to go away just because we put elderly people out of sight. This issue will become an unavoidable, major mercy and justice issue in the years to come. When was the last time you sat down and talked to an elderly person? Not chit-chat about the weather or their latest ailments, but really ask them important questions about their life. Of course, they'll want to tell you about their arthritis or their sore back or their dizzy spells. That's what they do. But underneath that is a world of stories that will make you laugh and make you cry. You just have to take the time to ask and listen. Take the time to ask them good questions about their life's journey. Once they start, a piece of how we got where we are today begins to unfold. They literally go back on the journey with you and recount to you their past. And that helps you put yourself in a context. You began to discover that you are here because they were here and did the work to be here. It truly makes their day, and I think it will make yours too. So many elderly people live alone without regular visits from family and friends. Most often, the only person they see each day is the Meals on Wheels volunteer or the med aide that's bringing them their medications. For some, you could be the only person they have a meaningful conversation with all day or even all week. I want to ask you to consider this as a mission field. I mean, a real, viable mission field right here in our own city. A worthy mission field, just as worthy as any other missional endeavor, worthy of intentional acts of mercy and justice. Just consider some questions. Do you have grandparents? If so, have you shown them that you love them lately? Or are you just leaving that up to mom and dad and uncles and aunts to show them that? What would Jesus say about your actions or your lack of actions towards your grandparents? Let's go beyond grandparents. What would happen if you really took the Bible verses I mentioned? What if you took them really seriously? I mean, really took them to heart. What might God ask you to do? What could possibly come from brainstorming how to bless a life that has given goodness into the world but now is neglected and overlooked? What if your small group adopted an elderly person? You would never be able to measure what that could mean to them. But listen to me. Please don't consider making a visit to an elder care facility. A visit isn't needed. A relationship is. Are you up for it? Are you brave enough? In Lubbock or where you are from or whatever city or town that you live in, there are hundreds of elderly who go days without any human contact. Solitary confinement for no crime except being old. A huge mercy issue. Don't you think God might consider them more important than call to duty or keeping up with the Walking Dead season? I challenge you to really do something that has some worth to it. Begin a relationship with an elderly person. Okay, I gotta quit. My time is up. If you have any questions for me or you want to make some more comments back to me about what I've said, come find me, call me, we'll get together. You buy the coffee and we'll visit. Thanks. Be blessed.